All right, Tara, this one is right up your alley. Tommy asks, do you have any experience with setting up distributed availability groups? What are the requirements and best way to use them?
What is meant by distributed, though? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, I believe he means. Oh, so I think you know what? I think I read something about this. Give me a second because I have to take my internet buttons off my fingers and type. So SQL Server 2016 distributed availability groups. All right. So I will paste that link over to you if you want to give that a look at. And I'm going to paste this into chat since I don't think any of us have a particularly good answer on that just yet because maybe some new magic that we haven't played much with. Tara would have the best chance of knowing some magic on that one. Let's see. Joseph says there was some great music in the 80s. It just gets lost under the hair and makeup. Yes. So did my grandmother. We still haven't found her. It's just a pile of hair and makeup.
Nice.
Oh, so you have two availability groups. So I haven't done it that way. The availability groups that I've used have been for HA reasons and DR reasons. So it was a multi-subnet configuration. We had one availability group stretching across two sites, 3 replicas at the primary site, 2 replicas at the DR site. So I haven't used this methodology before. Yeah, this is new for 2016, and I've only used it for 2012 and 2014. So I'm not sure what the advantages of using a distributed availability group as compared to just a multi-subnet configuration with one availability group.
Maybe that's something we could tootle around with DBA days when we have all that hardware at our disposal. I mean, none of it's really like widespread, so I don't think we get any of the funkiness that comes along, but
yeah,
we could try to do it.
Yeah, I'll definitely look more into it.
Cool. All right. Joseph has a follow-up question asking, but that double hop, this is going to go back to the upgrade past 2005 to 2016, that double hop should not be a licensing issue. I think they give back-level licensing with your latest level, right?
It depends if you have software assurance.
Yeah. You have to pay that SA tax, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay. Ian asks,
just to add to that, Microsoft does want you to upgrade. So if you don't have the 2012, bits to get it installed, I would contact whoever sold you the license and see if you can get that, because they really want you to upgrade off 2005. So I'm sure that they can help you here.
Sure enough. All right. Ian asks, if I call a sprock from server A that is on server B, where will it be processed? In other words, where will the memory and CPU and disk be hit?
It depends how you're doing it. I believe if you use Open Query, that'll actually run everything on the remote server. So we'd have to see how this is being called. So where does the store procedure?
So
it's on server B.
Yeah. So it changes a little bit. It depends on where the data is.
Mm-hmm.
So. If you're using linked servers, if you're using distributed queries, Connor Cunningham has a great talk about this on the SQL Bits website. I'm going to post the link in, but I'm also going to answer it a little bit. So it really depends on where the data is, and also then further where the SQL decides the best place to have the data is, because it can actually push some results around from one server to the other. If there's a smaller table on server A, it can actually bring that data over to server B and do a join there. I'm going to find the link to that talk where Connor's a really smart guy. He's one of the architects of SQL Server. He's been at Microsoft forever and ever, and he knows absolutely everything about this, so you will probably get all the information and more that you need from this talk. Highly recommend it. All right. We ready for another question? You want the next one? All right. Lee asks, what about the idea of sharding a 1.5 terabyte database into multiple databases on separate SQL instances in order to help performance issues related to blocking? I have a couple of developers who are pushing this idea on me despite my strong resistance. They believe it will help performance because there will be less data for a SQL Server to traverse during queries. I think the complexity simply is not worth it, and that sharding isn't the silver bullet in this situation. Any initial thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't like the sounds of it. I mean, I agree with Lee that this is going to be complex. How are you going to keep them all in sync, or are these completely separate databases that you don't have to keep in sync? You know, what performance issues are you having now? You're likely missing indexes, bad queries. There's something wrong. 1.5 terabyte database. It's large, but it's not that large. I've seen bigger databases than that.
Yeah, it's not large, and I think when are you going to have to pull the data and together and process it, right? So now you're going to multiple servers, multiple databases, and then I've got to put it in one place, and then I've got to actually get the results I want out, and that is a pain. It is terrible.
That is a really painful process. So some things you can try instead, if you want to talk to those little hamster wheel developers that you have trying to get you to shard everything, like this is a dupe. So what I would suggest is, if you're having problems with blocking, right? You have performance issues related to blocking, try an optimistic isolation level like snapshot isolation or read committed snapshot isolation. Also make sure that your indexes are effective. Make sure there are no missing indexes on that table. Make sure that there are no crazy indexes on that table. If you have a lot of borderline duplicate indexes or some overly wide indexes, a lot of the queries that are going to modify data can hold some pretty long locks on things and keep your other queries from doing stuff for a while. Don't use no lock. It's not going to help you. And if you find that you really do need to partition things out, I would try to go with the partitioned view idea before I would go to actual partitioning, and that's just where you create tables for a segment of data and you create a view that queries them all together. And if you have the right constraints by date or some other identifying characteristic, you can actually get pretty good elimination of certain tables when you hit that view. So there's a lot of stuff you can do before you go crazy separating a database out to a whole bunch of different servers that can help things.
Yeah, I've always just used straight partitioning, but when you do that, you have to always query by the partitioning key at that point.
Yeah, you also have to align all. Yeah, you also have to align all your indexes to the partition, and crazy stuff goes on.
Yeah,
this button does not partition tables.
But again, 1.5 terabytes is these days isn't really a ton of data. I feel it's more the norm than anything else.
Yeah, we deal with some pretty big databases day to day. Just today I was working on a database that was 450 gigs. So back when I had a real job, the biggest database I ever had was around 11 terabytes. So there's a lot of stuff you can do before you start having to get all hamstery about trying to shard data, especially because SQL Server wasn't really built for sharding like that.
So what was everyone's largest database that they've dealt with?
So the one that I was primary DBA on was 7 terabytes at one point, but however, the actual SQL Server DBA team, the largest one I believe at the time was 16 terabytes. I just wasn't primary on that one.
Did you ever have to do anything with that?
That was a third-party product, so they did have partitioning set up. They definitely had performance in mind, and setting it up properly had to do with a patent database.
Yeah, mine was 40 terabytes. So
oh, wow.
That was fun. That had some really unique problems to it that you just had to think outside the box to fix them.
So how much of that was like normal data, and how much of that was just like crazy lob columns?
No, it was all normal data. It was all POS data coming in from 35,000 stores across the U.S. So there was just massive amounts of data that are coming in on a daily basis. And the good thing is that they only needed stuff that was for the day or for the month, and then the rest of it essentially is not queried very often. So we had a lot of roll-ups in data warehouses and big Teradata implementation and stuff like that. But everything was stored in SQL Server.
All right. So Lee actually follows up and says, we are using RCSI and have been for a while. I agree sharding is overly complex to solve blocking issues. So if you're using RCSI and you still have blocking issues, give us a call, because that sounds like an interesting problem.
Yeah.
All right.
There's
Anchor
what's for
asks.
your database.
Yeah, I want to stare at that thing for a while and just see what's happening. Anchor asks, we use VM environment for our SQL 2014. I want to know the thresholds where I can say that this VM is done with new databases and time to spin a new VM up. Everyone says CPU, disk memory, but how much? Do you have any SQL which can tell this? Thanks. So guys, what thresholds do you look at for resource consumption before you say it's time to get a new server going and put some other stuff on there? Or another question would be, how many resources do you give each server and expect to see consumed by your workload?
It's really hard to answer. If I'm looking at new hardware, you're trying to decide what size hardware to buy for a new database. I'm thinking about what this database is going to need and how much the company can afford. So I like to go all out as far as hardware goes. That way you can be on that hardware for maybe a couple more years than if you went cheaper. But as far as a SQL query, there really isn't one. If you're on older hardware and your CPU is up and maybe you don't have enough memory, you look at your wait stats. Have you tuned everything that you can? And if you have, you may need to upgrade to newer hardware.
So you
Your
get a
older hardware
button that spins up a new VM.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
This one that shuts the old ones down. So what I would do is I would like Tara said, start looking at your wait stats. So if you have hit a bottleneck in one of those areas, do that. Our stored procedure blitz first. You can run that over spans of time, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever. Just see what your wait stats are. See what your bottlenecks are during your load times. Because not every server is going to be the same, right? As far as this one single query that does it, you're not going to really get that. I mean, there are queries out there that examine wait stats and like aggregate them over time, but you really want to know what you're waiting on when things are busy, right? You don't care what things are waiting on when you're doing maintenance. You don't care what things are waiting on when you're doing backups in DBCC CheckDB or index stuff, because that's not customer facing. I would run Blitz first. I would get a good idea of what my bottlenecks are, and then I would try to tune from there. Blitz first will tell you if your CPU utilization is really high. So like with the VM, you want to typically be using a little bit more than you do with a physical box, because with VM, resources that are sitting around idle can actually be a performance drag on that. I believe David Cleve has a good blog post on that somewhere. I don't have it handy though. So I would just make sure that my CPUs aren't just constantly pegged at 100%. I want to make sure that my memory is I'm not constantly reading from disk, getting a lot of page IO latch or stuff like that. So I would want to measure each server differently and just find out whatever bottleneck I'm hitting.
Just a quick correction. I said SP3 was released a couple weeks ago. I really meant SP2. I got my numbers mixed up for 2014.
Yeah, SP3 is 2012.
Yeah, exactly.
This button downloads SP3 for 2012, and this one downloads to SP2 for 2014. God, that's confusing. All right. Monica asks, is this an Excel question? What do you know about symlinks? We are running out of space on our SAN, causing our backups to intermittently fail until we can get the space added. One of the suggestions was to move a database to another server and use a symlink.
I don't know what that is.
Me either. Is that a SAN thing? Because that doesn't sound like a SQL Server thing.
No, it's a symbolic link. Think of it as like a super
a pointer.
Yeah, pointer, a shortcut, right?
Does SQL Server support that? I mean, is it a SAN technology that's going to redirect it somewhere else?
From the OS perspective, it thinks the file is actually there, but it goes to somewhere else. I've never tried it with SQL Server. It seems slow. It would feel, I don't know, but it'd be interesting. You go ahead and give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I would be very concerned about Okay, so you want to move a database to a symlink? No, it sounds like a horrible idea. Especially like because where would the symlink be? Would it be physically? It sounds like it would be physically further away, right?
Is it another SAN? I mean, I just wonder if this increases your risk of database corruption.
Yeah, I would be concerned about a whole lot of things. Yeah,
I've never heard of it being used for SQL Server.
Yeah.
I
would rather point my backups to a symlink than anything else, because
Well, now with SQL Server on Linux, you may get your chance of sim linking all day long with SQL Server.
I always wanted SQL Server on Linux. I'm so excited because that was like the one thing missing in my life. I was like, wife, kid, good job, SQL Server on Linux. Where are you? Where are you? Because Windows Core wasn't good enough. I need Linux. I want to bash everything. Run my cron jobs to defragment all my indexes. It's a dream of mine. It's a dream we all live in. All right. So that is all of the questions that we've got. Michael says, I am a sick man. Yes. Oh, here we go. Gregory asks, have you ever used DNS entries to mask your DB server names to avoid connection string changes when you change or move hardware, kicking the idea around? Thoughts?
All the time. I've used it a lot. I've used it back in SQL Server 2000, and I actually prefer, I think that right out of the gate you should be using DNS entries and not the actual SQL Server name, because over the years you're going to be upgrading, moving hardware.
So are you talking about like a CNAME alias in DNS or something else?
A CNAME alias.
Yeah.
I love
that
it.
was his question too. So tell us more about it, because we don't have any other questions. So if you want to expound on this, get your sister.
Well, I can't expound on the actual DNS portion of it, but yeah, I mean we used it a lot. And as a matter of fact, there's a way to for availability groups to if your applications are running using older database drivers that do not support the multi-subnet configuration, you can set up your DNS to. You can set up a DNS alias so that it redirects to itself, I believe is what we did at my last job to get it was really fancy. It was a fancy DNS thing, and I wasn't the one who set it up like that, but so a sysadmin knew what to do. But yeah, I probably used at least 100 DNS aliases over the years.
Nice.
I much prefer it.
Yeah, so one thing that the CNAME alias is very common with is log shipping. That's because log shipping doesn't support any of the connection string fanciness that mirroring and availability groups do. Right. So with log shipping, if you fail over and you expect your application to just say, oh, I need the server, then you need a CNAME alias so that log shipping can gracefully, or that your application can gracefully handling a log shipping failover to some other server out in the great wild west. This button has nothing to do with CNAME aliases or DNS. Nothing to do with it.
You like your buttons.
Yes, but this button might end the webcast if someone doesn't start asking a question, or if Richie doesn't have something really interesting to talk about.
We have eight more minutes.
I think it's just going to be funny to see you setting all that up in AWS. I think that's going to be just kind of a hoot.
Oh no, I'm gonna make you write the code.
Oh dang it!
Yeah. So
I thought it was already set up.
Oh man.
No, because they're going to do all sorts of different things. Like I'm going to want 1 click to do one thing, and 2 clicks to do another thing, and 3 clicks is going to turn the TV on in the middle of the night and freak everyone out. It's gonna be like I think you could actually have like a whole Scooby-Doo episode of some dude just hanging out with IoT buttons, just like ghost Martians. Like stair creaking, chandelier drops. It's like all sorts of stuff, like pillowcase on coat hanger down hallway. That's what I would do.
If it wasn't for you and you pesky kids.
You pull the mask off and it's Jeff Bezos like, Urgh.
I would have stolen that money from that old woman.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think you can make that work. I think you have a whole genre of mysteries surrounded by IoT buttons. By the way, I don't get any kickback for showing these things. I just enjoy the way they feel in my hands. They're like little maracas.
They only have like 1,000 clicks, so you don't want to be wasting those clicks, man.
I'm not even clicking. I just do the clicking action. Just like practice clicking. All right. Hey, Mike asks.
That's a good one.
What do you think of Hallengren maintenance solution script jobs? We love them.
We recommend them to all of our clients. A small minority of our clients are already using them. So yeah, we definitely like them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They handle all of those grody broom and dustpan tasks that no DBA actually wants to do. So backup, DBCC, check DB, and index and statistics maintenance. Hooray! And it's all written out. It's very well coded, much better than you could do on your own. It's kept up to date, totally free. All sorts of bug fixes and stuff comes out with new versions. So totally recommend them. They are awesome.
And just to give you a number, at my job, 3 jobs ago, we had it on about 700 servers. So it's definitely used probably on thousands of servers around the world.
Mm-hmm. Gregory asks, you know anything about SOS scheduler yield weights? I get CPU queue length weights on my VM DB server sometimes.
All right, so sometimes, but what is your overall weight stats? Since SQL Server's been online, are you just seeing SAS scheduler yield sometimes, or is that like your top weight? Give us some more information.
If it's only SOS scheduler yield, that's a little weird because usually that comes along with CX packet. There's a lot of CX packet. But SOS scheduler yield is, of course, when something gets on a thread or gets on a worker to start running, and for some reason it can't keep running, like it's waiting for a lock on something else to release so it can run, and it exhausts its quantum. Its quantum has 4 milliseconds to get everything it needs and keep on going. And if it doesn't get that, it goes to the back of the queue and waits its turn patiently, like a good Englishman, to go back and run again. So we would need some other weight stats along with SOS scheduler yield to give you a better diagnosis. Michael asks, I believe it's Michael. It's M-I-K-A-L. If I said that wrong, I'm sorry. We do a full DBCC on a restored production database weekly. Do we also need to do it on the actual production database? No.
You do not.
You can if you want, but
yeah. Yeah, on these VLDBs, you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to move, have a SAN snapshot or something that gets the database to another server and run CheckDB there, because you just can't possibly run CheckDB on very large databases.
Yeah. So one thing I used to do was I would offload the full DBCC check to another server, but I would periodically do physical only checks on my my actual production instance because they're quicker and they're a little bit more lightweight. They're still horrible. They're a little bit easier to stomach than the full run. So you could like once a month or once a week still run it on your primary, but offloading is totally a legit strategy for the full DBCC check, as long as it's on a full backup, clean full backup every single time. Let's see, we have a couple minutes left and a couple questions left. So Joseph asks, drum roll, do you have much experience with people storing unstructured data in the database, blob, or XML data, querying, retrieving, etc.? Does it perform well or does it have issues, gotchas? How does it compare to something like Hadoop? Don't know about Hadoop. Do query a lot of XML.
And XML parsing. I mean, I've seen some clients that have to do a lot of XML parsing, and it, unfortunately, is just slow in SQL Server. So I mean, I have a hard time telling them what to do. Move all that XML parsing into the application, and don't do that work in SQL Server.
Yeah, don't do it in SQL Server.
But if you have to do it in SQL Server, there are some things you can do to help it. So like one thing that I usually suggest is if you are constantly depending on like an exists query in your XML to give you something, then I make a computed column out of that, and I just query the computed column. XML indexes are also wonderful things. They can really help if you are looking for a few consistent paths. So check out the rules around XML indexes and see if they could be useful to you. One really big downside to XML stuff in SQL Server is that it always runs single-threaded. It will serialize anything. So you can't see any parallel processing of XML data. So that's one reason why it's always going to be a little bit slower and why you shouldn't do it in SQL Server. But if you gotta, check out indexes, check out computed columns based on certain XML queries because they can help you. They're usually better options than doing all that processing on the fly. All right. We have
just do everything in JSON. That's faster in SQL Server, right?
Yeah, totally. That's the best way to do things. It's the way everyone should know.
Or maybe it's the exact same code.
Yeah, get the blobs out of the database.
Agreed.
All right. With that, I think I've had enough for one day. How about you guys?
Sure.
All right. We are at time. It's been lovely chatting with you all, and we'll see you. Well, not see you next week because next week will be at DBA days. But we'll see. So
we will see you next week.
So we'll see you in different ways at DBA.
Make sure you register. Sign up.
Yeah. We're gonna break all sorts of stuff. Adios.
All right, bye.